Hey, welcome back to the JMach podcast, where our mission is to make veterans great again through community involvement. And I'm your host, JMach. Thank you for tuning in. Together, we can conquer our mental health one step at a time. I want to thank our sponsors, TRC, Total Roofing and Construction, and Arizona Organics, Arizona's first legal dispensary. Please like and subscribe, and remember that your mental health matters. You're not alone. And enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the JMach podcast. Today I'd like to introduce Richard Mulder, a West Point Army graduate, former officer of the United States Army as well. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks, brother. Thanks so much for having me. Love the setup. So happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you being here and taking the time and reaching out and making sure we get this done.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm back in town for a week doing a bunch of stuff while I'm here, and yeah, just grateful to be here for sure.
Yeah, I'm honored that you're taking time. I know you have a busy schedule, so I'm honored you're taking time out to be on the show. So we'll just dive right into it. What was your childhood like?
Childhood. So I was actually born in Canada. We moved. I call it like we were like hillbilly Canadians. Didn't come from a ton of money. My dad was working 3 jobs. My mom was working, trying to raise us. And then we moved down to Arizona when I was 4. And so I always say, my dad was like the picture of the American dream to me. I can't imagine now, and granted, I've had plenty of, differences with my father, just like most of us probably have, but now that I'm a little bit older, I just can't imagine the courage that it took for him to take his whole family out of his home country and and move across the freaking world. Might as well say it that way. Down to Arizona, he took a job with Davidson's Firearms. Ended up working his way up through that. And ended up being the vice president of Davidson's Firearms. So they were, I think they were the 3rd largest wholesale firearm company in the world at one point. And we went from it's kind of like rags to riches, and so watching, his family, he came from, kind of an alcoholic, abusive situation, and then, just gave my brother and I really every opportunity to succeed and to fuck up, and then to, hopefully learn from that.
Right. Do you remember anything from Canada?
Man, not really. And we've kind of had a strained relationship with my Canadian relatives. My dad's family was very, I don't know if it was jealousy or upset that he would leave the rest of the family and go to the United States. And then my mom's family we were always close with until her father died, and it put a bunch of strain on the family. And so, man, we don't have a ton of contact with those people anymore, which is sad, but it just kind of is what it is. And haven't been back now since my grandpa's funeral.
Okay. So you grew up in Arizona. What was that like for you?
It was great, man. I grew up in Prescott, Arizona.
Nice.
Small town. It's gotten so much bigger than it was when I was a kid. I remember when we got the Harkins movie theater in Prescott Valley, and that was a big deal. They put a mall in when I was in high school, and it was oh my gosh, we're getting a mall. We used to hang out in the Hastings bookstore parking lot, that was the place. But yeah, man, Arizona is just such a great place. I really do love it. My wife and I, we were trying to move back to Prescott last year, but we were just priced out. Everything is crazy here right now, especially in Prescott.
Yeah.
And we wanted a little bit of land, and just with rates the way they are and, the price of the home, we were this is silly. We can't do this. So we started looking elsewhere, and we actually ended up looking at, places that were pretty veteran friendly. And found Oklahoma, and Oklahoma checked a ton of boxes for us, and neither of us had ever been, and I was like, "Fuck it, man, let's go check it out." So went out there, looked at some houses, and found one that was perfect, man. So now we've got 5 acres. We're 25 minutes outside of the city, 25 minutes from the airport. Super good food scene there. We got 3 dogs. We're just kind of loving that country life,
Yeah, Oklahoma, I looked at it briefly just for one of my fun hobbies is when I'm bored, I'll look at Zillow, at different places. Oklahoma seemed like a nice state. Mm-hmm. My wife's though, they got a lot of tornadoes.
Yeah, that's what everyone's saying. We haven't had one yet, but we just moved last October. So
yeah.
We'll see. We were talking to the neighbors, and they said the last big one that came through I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, ripped their garage door off. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we'll see what happens here.
Are
But
tornadoes like lightning and don't really strike in the same area twice?
I have no idea, man. Like, I hear different things about tornadoes all the time, and it's just not something that I can dedicate a lot of mental energy towards.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you
I'm
can't
not
worry
gonna-
about that.
Yeah.
Do you guys have basements in?
Yeah, we've got, it's not a basement, but it's a storm shelter. So
Okay.
storm shelter, like, built into the backyard. And
See, I miss basements.
Yeah.
I grew up in Illinois and we had basements, and
Yeah.
I thought basements were everywhere.
yeah,
And they're not.
Yep.
And Arizona has no storage in their houses,
Mm-hmm.
especially coming from Illinois with the pole barn and a basement and all that. So let's go back to your childhood a little bit. And when did your grandfather pass away on your mom's side?
oh gosh, it was prior to COVID. I think it
Oh,
was.
so you were an adult?
Yeah, I was an
Okay.
adult, and and you know, being in the military, like you just kind of, like when you're in the military, that's what you're doing, you know, and
Right.
you don't have. I didn't, at least. I didn't have a lot of contact with outside of my, you know, like my job and my immediate family. So that was in like 2018, I think is when he passed. But
Okay,
then-
so let's back up to your actual childhood.
Sure,
and
sure.
what was high school like?
High school was awesome, man. I went to Orem. It was like private school. You know, it's on a ranch. It's in between Prescott and Phoenix, really. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
No. Yeah, it's a real small school, but man, it was super cool. It gave me a lot of opportunities that I don't think I would have had otherwise. So, you know, I played a ton of sports. I was a four-sport athlete, you know, captain of the basketball team junior, senior year. I played football, ran track, did weightlifting, did that whole thing, and got in a lot of trouble. You know, I was pretty wild, man. Like I don't know why. I just kind of have always had a little bit of a rebellious spirit, and that definitely came through in high school. I look back and I'm like, I don't know how my parents kind of even handled me, honestly.
It's that country life for you, though.
What's that?
The country life. You
Yeah.
know, you got nothing out there to do but cause trouble.
Yeah, and it's fun causing trouble when you're 16, you know?
Right.
Like, sometimes.
Because it's not, you don't think you're causing trouble as much as you're having fun.
Having
you
fun,
know?
yeah.
But I want to learn more about the school. It sounds kind of interesting being
Yeah.
on a ranch.
Yeah.
So was it like a normal traditional school, or did you do ranch things?
Yeah, it was not a normal traditional school. It was really, really quite awesome, man. Like we did all sorts of different things that, you know, normal high schoolers don't get to do. So yeah, there was a heavy ranch influence if you wanted to pursue that, right? Like some kids did it more than others. I did the Gymkhana, which is like it's every year it was just like a rodeo competition. So yeah, definitely rode horses. My buddy Mike Brooks and I were on the football team. We did it was like a barrel ribbon race, you know, and neither of us were good horsemen whatsoever. And but we you hold a ribbon in between the two of you. You're both on separate horses, and it's who can get around what team can get around the barrel fastest without dropping the ribbon. And there's bronco riding. There was all kinds of stuff if you wanted to do that at the school. But there was also all kinds of other things. Like we did a fine arts week where, hey, like no classes for this week, and we're just like doing a workshop. So I did like a stained glass workshop, learned how to do that. I did a radio workshop. I did a video workshop where we like made our own little movie. All kinds of things like that. And then I think one of the coolest experiences that we had was it's called Caravan. So every year you go on a trip, and your choice of that trip is based on your seniority. And so, like, obviously, seniors are going to get to go on the coolest trips. But, I mean, I backpacked the Mogollon Rim with a bunch of guys from the basketball team. I went to Quino Bay, Mexico my senior year, which was, like, just off the charts cool, man. Like, it was so real. We stayed with Prescott College at this, biology kind of department type deal down there. And we got to go out, we were probably 30 feet away from a feeding frenzy as it was happening in the ocean. So, freaking birds dive bombing, dolphins swimming, sea lions out there, sharks, like all kinds of wildlife we got to see. We were probably 200 feet away from this big, sea lion nest. So hundreds of sea lions. And I mean, it was just an unreal experience to have I guess I was 17. Yeah.
That whole overall high school experience sounds pretty awesome. My kids are growing up, I don't want them to go to a traditional school.
Yeah.
And that sounds like an awesome alternative.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. And then, it's funny, because I somehow, I got accepted into West Point, and I don't think if I would have went to a normal college that I that I would have gotten the opportunity to even pursue that, let alone get accepted. I think like all that stuff lined up for me.
Do you mean a normal high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. So where did the college or the military background come to you? Or like what brought you into wanting to go to West Point?
It was 9/11. Like,
Okay.
you know, I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened. And I remember I was like, you know, I was on my way up to morning announcements at the chapel, and I passed my buddy Jimmy Mann, and he's like, dude, they hit the Twin Towers. They hit the Twin Towers. And I was like, I didn't even know what the Twin Towers were. We go to morning announcements, and you know, hey, there's been like a huge attack on the United States, and we went to like our I forget what we call it, our counselors, our mentors, you know, homes, because all their homes were on the school premises as well. And we watched the news, you know, all morning. We had kids from New York going to school there, and you know, it was a really crazy time. And I just remember, you know, I was a young man, and I just remember like I am going as soon as I can. I am going over. Like I remember that just stuck in my head. Like I want to stop this from ever happening again. I felt like very defensive. Yeah, and it made me angry. It made me a lot of different things. And I knew I wanted to go hurt those people that would do that. And yeah, and then my parents kind of like slowed me down, and they were like, okay, like, you know, let's explore all your options. You know, you don't have to just, you know, like sign the dotted line and just go as a grunt or whatever. And I didn't even know what the military academies were at that point. But my parents they were like, you know, why don't you take a look at this and see what you think? And I got accepted to a summer program as a rising junior to go to West Point and for a week or two. And I was just, at that point, it was the most incredible place I had ever been. And it still might be. I mean, the history in that place is just, it's unreal, man. It's so beautiful. And it's just, you walk on those grounds and it's just like, it's impactful. Like, man, you can freaking hear the ghosts, man. It's really, really cool. You're right on the Hudson River, like the point, you know, where we stretched in the American Revolution, like stretched these chains across the Hudson River to stop the British from coming down and, you know, stop the British name. I mean, there was so much history that happened at West Point. It was unbelievable. And I knew when I went there, I was like, I have to come to school here. I have to do it. It was the only service academy I applied to. I ended up getting a scholarship to U of A as well, and I thought that I wasn't going to get into West Point. I was number 2. Like, you have to do all this shit with your, you know, politicians. You have to get like a senator's recommendation. You have to get or a congressman's recommendation. So I interviewed with all of them, like John Kyle, Rick Renzi, and John McCain, and I got recs from John Kyle and Rick Renzi, but I was like lower on the list. So the only reason I got in, and I got in at like the 11th hour in May. The only reason I got in was because the guy ahead of me dropped out, and so I ended up taking a spot for that. And I got the call that I got appointed to West Point, and I was like, holy shit, and I reported in June.
So is it like going to a traditional high school or a traditional college then, or do you?
It could not be further from a traditional college. Yeah.
I mean by like the academic year, right?
Yeah.
So like you had a summer and then you went.
No, so like your summers are always you're doing something. I think we probably had 3 weeks off a summer, or maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. But you're doing military schools, you're doing training, you're doing so that first summer is just cadet basic training. And that's just a freaking whirlwind of shit.
So from senior year in high school, you graduated, and before you started classes, you had to go through like a basic training?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Yep, and that was, it started off with like, hey, this is how you be a cadet. And it's just like military bearing, like hazing out the ass, like crazy. And then, and then we do a little bit of field training, get your first exposure into like the military, basically.
Was it an actual boot camp?
I mean,
Did you live there?
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, you're like watched all the time. You sleep with your door open, like it's a freaking you were like under lock and key, man. And
okay.
Yeah, it's an actual boot camp for I think it was 8 weeks, I believe.
Did you have Firewatch?
Oh yeah, we got there's Firewatch. There's freaking like I still remember, man. So I was 17 when I went, and I really didn't know anything about the military, man. I was a total noob when it came to this, and that first day was just like it just all of a sudden it was nighttime, And I was like, holy shit, like what did I just get myself into? You know, like no talk, like there's no talking outside of your room. And that's for your whole first year at West Point. You cannot talk outside your room. Everywhere you walk with your hands cupped, like you're marching. You have to like hug corners. You walk along walls always. You can't walk in the middle of a hallway even. Like when you're eating meals, it is like you are sitting up fist distance between your back and the table, back of the chair and the table. You're squaring your meals. You get 5 bites per item of food that you put in your mouth. Like, and it's tons of rules beyond that. You know, it is so intense, and it's such a shift from your normal childhood. You know.
Yeah, such a shock. You were a free-spirited kid, and now they're taking that spirit away from you and taming it.
Yeah, it was, it was very, very interesting way to, like, kind of sculpt people.
Yeah, please explain more about West Point. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so, like, your first year is really, it's really the thing that kind of, like, makes or breaks a lot of people. And a lot of people are like, this isn't for me, for a number of reasons, right? And like for me, like everyone has different experiences, but for me, I went from being like, kind of like the man in high school, I was good at all these sports, was super popular, was freaking girls, this, that, whatever. And, like it was all fairly, like, I don't want to say easy. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like I wasn't working hard. I was just being me. And, like pretty much straight A's the whole time, like who cares? And, and then I go to West Point, and I was like, it was so humbling, man. Like, it was such a shock to my entire existence. I was like bottom of the barrel. I was like less physically fit. I was less freaking, I wasn't nearly as smart as some of these people. I mean, holy shit, the amount of intelligence at West Point is crazy. I wasn't funnier. I wasn't, I didn't know nearly as much about the world. I wasn't as handsome. I wasn't like all these things. Like, I was the bottom of the barrel. And it just showed me so much about how hard I had to work to try to like claw my way up, So yeah, that first year, man, it was like very close to breaking, a lot. And I got so lucky, man. I met like some of my best friends in the whole world. We were so lucky, right? Like they scramble your companies a lot as you go through West Point. We got super lucky. We didn't get scrambled the whole time we were there, which means we never, like, you live with, in the barracks with your company, and they'll scramble certain classes. So they'll send them to other companies, and you get mixed with the rest of the Corps cadets. We didn't get scrambled for 4 years. So we really, like, we sweat and bled and drank together and ate together, and it was so it's like a bond that will never be broken. 4 years with the same guys and girls, just freaking working your ass off trying to make it.
Did you get your MOS while you were there, or
Yeah.
how does that work out?
Yep. So I guess that was junior year.
Okay.
You have branch night, and then you have post night. And so everything at West Point is based on your class rank, everything. So it's a constant competition. And you've got, and for 4 years, like, and you are constantly reminded of that. So there's a physical pillar, there's an academic pillar, and there's a military pillar. You get grades and scores based on your performance in all 3 of those things. And so you're taking physical classes all the time. You're taking APFTs twice a year. You're doing, that for your physical score. Your military training is where you get graded by actual officers and NCOs that come back to serve as cadre at West Point, and professors and teachers. And then you have your academic score, which is, your grades. And your class rank is based heavily on academics. And then I think it's next is military, and then it's physical. And then where your class rank is what decides what you get to do in the Army afterwards. And so, you put your ranks in. So like I wanted to be an infantry guy. I put, infantry, and then aviation, and then whatever else I put. I think I was like somewhere around 300 or 313th in my class or something like that. And so
Out of how many?
Out of less than 1,000.
Okay.
We started off with 1,500, and we graduated less than 1,000. So
Okay.
I think it was like 960 something that graduated. So I put infantry, and I wasn't afraid that I wasn't going to get infantry. I was going to get it for sure. And so I got that, no big deal. And so branch night, you find out that you got infantry. So all the infantry guys in the class of 2009, which I was, you go and you basically celebrate together, right? And everybody gets turned up and like just gets freaking, pretty shitty, and you're blood pinning each other with your cross rifles, and everyone's walking around with cross rifles bleeding out of their chest all night, and so it was a pretty cool experience.
Did you play any sports?
I didn't at West Point. So let me caveat that everyone has to do physical. You have to play sports at West Point. But there's intramural sports where you're competing against other companies, because everyone at West Point is an athlete. Like, there's very few people that are incapable of athleticism there. So, you have to play sports. So, I played like intramural basketball, flicker ball, field hockey, all kinds of different things. And then, you're either after school, you're either drilling or playing sports or doing some other physical activity, some kind of physical club.
What was the worst thing that you took away from West Point?
The worst thing?
Yeah.
Dang, man, that's a good question. Dude, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about West Point. I always say that if active duty would have been like West Point, I would have stayed in for a career. I'm so proud of that institution. I still think that it graduates the cream of the crop. I think that those young men and women that are going there today are just really powerful individuals, and they're very motivated, sometimes for the wrong reasons, right? But it's like their motivations are their own motivations, and very, very strong people. And I think that West Point, it's an institution unlike any other. And they don't teach you what to think; they teach you how to think. They really inspire critical thinking, which you wouldn't think that in like a military institute. You would think that, oh, this is the way you do it, and it's our way. That's the only way. It's not the case. They really inspired critical thinking and learning, and I think it is the best education in America, hands down. It's better than Harvard, it's better than Stanford, it's better than all that shit. And I really. Man, I don't think I have a ton bad to say about it, man. I'm sure there was something that I didn't like, but you know what? Here's what it is. The worst part I took away from West Point is a fucking drinking problem. That's the worst part about West Point, yeah.
Well, you were going to get that once you
in
hit
the Army
the fleet anyways,
yep,
right?
Exactly.
So what was the best thing you've taken away from West Point?
Teamwork, man. Teamwork, and, like the saying, everybody knows it, cooperate and graduate. No one gets through West Point alone. And that was always kind of like a thing for me before I went there, but especially while I was there and afterwards, like the importance of a team. There is hands down no more important lesson.
And what was an average day like at West Point, from wake up to bed?
Yeah, so okay, average day. It's like, that's a Monday or Tuesday or whatever. You wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever it is. Get ready, put your stuff on. You've got roll call first thing in the morning for Reveille, salute the flag, morning, this is what's going on for the day. It gets briefed to you. And you're outside. If it's too freaking cold, because it's like right off the Hudson, we do it inside. Most of the time we're outside. And then we've got the whole corps eats together, eats breakfast together. And then it's classes in the morning. As part of those classes, somewhere in that day, you've probably got some sort of a physical activity class. So you've got like a physical education class, boxing, swimming, survival swimming, which is an incredible class, gymnastics. You've got to take military movement, some sort of physical activity throughout that day. And then you've got lunch. The whole corps eats lunch together. Then you've got your afternoon classes. You roll right into it. Sometimes, like, your lunch would be broken up. You get like an hour and a half. So sometimes it's like, hey, shove your food down your throat because we've got, another briefing or whatever that we've got to do today. So it's like, ethical decision-making process. Like, maybe we've got guest speakers, something like that during that lunch hour. And then we roll right into classes. Classes are all afternoon. Right after classes are done, then you're either doing drill or a sport. So you're throwing on your drill uniform, or getting ready to go play something against somebody else, like always competing, always. And then after that, it's generally, time for dinner. So then you go to dinner, and dinner is not, I think there was like one required dinner, I believe, like one required dinner where the whole corps eats together. But generally speaking, dinner is kind of like on your own. You figure out what to do for it. You go to the mess hall usually. And then after that, you're doing homework from, 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and then you go to sleep and do it all over again.
What was survival swimming like?
That was one of my favorite classes I took at West Point. Everyone has to take survival swimming. And when you first go, you get, I forget what it was. It was like you swim 400 meters as fast as you can or something like that, right? And based on your score and your time in that, you get assigned a level of survival swimming. So I was a pretty strong swimmer, and so I was in the advanced class for swimming. And the stuff we did in there was so freaking rad. Like, and you get tested on it, right? But we're doing, like in your gear, blindfolded, jump off a 30-foot, a 30-foot diving board. And then when you hit the water, blindfold comes off, and then you have to stay underwater, and then you're swimming through rings, because the facilities at West Point, they are like, we've got, I think there was 2 Olympic-sized pools, and then there was a like a wave pool where they had, they could simulate rain and lightning and huge waves and stuff, and freaking rad, man. So we did all that stuff, and then, there was just like the physical conditioning side of swimming, but a majority of it was actually like based on, ditching your gear in the water and swimming with boots on and BDUs and whatever, like blowing up your BDUs to float like in the waves, and you have all this gear on you. And it was a really cool class.
It sounds pretty interesting and a great experience.
It was cool, yeah.
How were the football games?
Man, so you have to go to the football games. Everyone must go. The home games, at least. It was always like, you would love your weekend to yourself, but in reality, you always get Sunday to yourself, almost always. But then I think you usually get like one Saturday to yourself, especially during football season. So you usually those game days. It starts with a parade. So you're doing like a march on parade, which takes hours in your morning. And then as soon as that's done, you go eat some food or whatever, and then everyone walks up to Mikey Stadium, and you have to stand during the whole football game. Yeah, but looking back, I was like, it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of. While I was going through it, I don't think I felt that way. But I look back at that and I'm like, yes, freaking cool, man. Like, it's very different. It was neat. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it'd be like a love-hate relationship, right? Like, it's a lot of fun and a great experience, but now you're being forced to be there. Yeah. So it kind of takes away from it a bit until you look back in hindsight.
Yeah, and it's like there's like probably a little bit more hate when you're going through it, and
right.
then once you're like, the farther you get removed for it, like the more love you have for it and what it did for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what was graduation like?
Graduation was cool, man. Yeah, it was a huge day, right? We made it, and I broke my collarbone like 2 weeks before graduation, so it sucked. Like the salute, I remember the salute at the end, or like for the national anthem, I'm like resting my elbow on the girl in front of me because I could barely lift my arm, and but no, it was amazing, man. Getting that diploma, because right after graduation's over, then you go to your commissioning ceremony, and you commission as an officer in the United States Army too. And then really what everyone's looking forward to is either 30 or 60 days of leave right after. And so I got 60 days of leave. That's still the most time off I've ever had in my life. And it was a fantastic day, like a brilliant day.
So do you get paid at West Point or not till you commission in?
You get paid, but it's like $120 a month. And it's like nothing. So you start off at like $120 a month as a freshman, and then it's just for like incidentals, Okay. So no, you're a broke ass college kid. But everything's paid for, right? Like your food, your lodging. You're not paying for anything because you're not doing anything. So that's about it.
So do you have to pay to go to that college?
No.
Or West Point?
Nope. You sign a contract that's like, so you have until, I think it's like halfway through your sophomore year to decide if you want to continue going. And if you do, then you're stuck, right? And then you owe 5 years active duty time and 3 years either active or in the individual ready reserves. And a lot of people, they'll add service years on in order to like secure a spot in something they really want to do. So they'll do like, hey, I'm going to branch detail infantry because I'm going to become a military intelligence officer. But they want to do all the cool guy stuff, go to Ranger School, have that experience first, and then go MI. Some people branch detail for college experience, so they're like, they're guaranteed to be able to go back and get their master's, things like that. I didn't do that. I just chose 5 years, and then I'll figure it out. And so I just did my 5 years time, got out, and then I was in the individual ready reserve for 3 years.
How was your 60 days of leave?
Man, it was crazy. I got married. We're divorced now. I'm remarried. But I got married. Did the honeymoon. did a bunch of traveling, got settled in Georgia. I was in Georgia, for a year and a half basically after that for all the schooling. It was just kind of a whirlwind, and it kind of came and went before before I could realize it. But
So what was your journey after your leave in the Army?
yeah, so that's where it all starts to kind of get crazy, right? I was infantry, so we did, officer basic, and then we did infantry officer basic. I did, and then, rolled into Ranger school. I think I did Ranger school. And then I did, when I graduated from Ranger school, it was so funny, man, like, you're just busted. Like, Ranger school took years off my life. I'm definitely not, I have no doubts about that. I didn't get the feeling back in my toes for a year. It's crazy, man. Like, I went in at 195 pounds. I came out at 161. I'm 6'1". I'm not supposed to be 160 pounds. And so, it was a pretty wild experience. But, we get back to our little like pool of infantry officers that basically you consolidate in this pool, and then they send people out to different schools, and you come back, more schools, whatever. So we get back to that, and I was going to Fort Lewis to a striker brigade. And so they're like, okay, well, all you guys that just graduated from Ranger school, and it's like a Thursday, let's say, they're like, on Monday, you got a PT test at the striker leader course. And we're like, okay. So we all show up. Everybody fails the PT test. Like, we're all like broken, man. Like, I'm falling asleep everywhere I go. I can't stay awake. Like, it was crazy. But, so we do the striker leader, I do airborne school, do all that shit. And then from there, then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and joined my unit for the first time. And that's kind of where everything started to, I started to realize what the active duty Army kind of really was for me.
How different was active duty Army compared to West Point?
Yeah, to me, night and day. And I hope that people have better experiences than I did, as far as leadership goes. But it was night and day. I just think there's so much professionalism and so much honor at West Point, and I don't know what gets lost in active duty. But gosh, man, it was very, very different for me. But that being said, there's still like some of my best friends in the whole world I met on active duty. They're brothers to this day, and I truly cherished being a platoon leader. I loved being a platoon leader. I absolutely loved it. I got very lucky. I had 24 months of platoon leader time. So I had 12 months in garrison as just a line platoon leader, and then I actually got accepted into Ranger Assessment Selection Program. So I was trying to go to battalion, or go to regiment rather, but I go to Ranger Assessment Selection Program, make it all the way through, man. I was in the best shape of my life. I was ready for this thing, and I got to the board, and the whole time I've been telling myself, like, all right, just make it to the board, you got this, and it was a 2-week course, fucking hard ass 2 weeks, like crazy hard 2 weeks. Make it to the board, and I'm like, I got this shit, right? And so walk in, and this is kind of a long story, but I think it's worth telling. So I walk in, and I do my thing, and my first thing is like, hey, you're gonna create and brief a platoon live fire. So that's what I'm ready for, right? Like I draw it all out on the board. I got my manuals. I know what FM this comes from. I know what training circular this comes from. Sergeant Major, he's asking me the first questions about it after I brief it. I fucking got all the answers, right? Then, we start moving down the line to the other people. And then the lieutenant colonel that was going to hire me, he's like, so what have you heard about the board so far? And one thing I told myself going into that board was I wasn't going to lie. I was not going to tell a lie, no matter how hard they press me, because they try to trip you up and all kinds of shit, right? And if for anyone not familiar, there's 4 very high-ranking people in front of you and just having their way with you, So it's a pretty intense experience. And so I told myself, like, no matter what, I'm not going to lie, right? And so what have you heard about the board so far? Of course, everyone's talking about the board. And so I'm like, I've heard this, yada, yada. And most recently, I've heard that, you asked, how do you explain the color blue to a blind man? And, and so they're like, this colonel's like, oh, so after this board's over, you're going to go talk about it with your little buddies back there? And I'm like, yes, sir. Yeah, I want them to be as equipped for the board as I was. We're all helping each other out. And he's like, and you don't see the problem in that, And then it became this big, more questioning of my moral character. And it came, and that part of Ranger Assessment Selection Program is you do like a full day of psychological evaluation. You talk to a psychiatrist and like fill out all kinds of freaking tests, you know, like, do you love your mother? Are you in love with your mother? Does your mother love you? Blah, blah, all this shit. And so they're like, well, your psych eval came back that you have non-traditional moral values. And I was like, huh. And to me, I took that as I don't go to church, right? And I'm not a robot. And, you know, who knows what it actually was from that thing. But so that comes back, and this whole board starts, like, I can feel it just, like, spiraling out of my control, right? And so a long story long, I end up getting 2 votes for Ranger Regiment, 2 votes no. And you need 3 to get in. So I don't make it. And so I go back into this, like, stew room after it's over. And this lieutenant colonel that was just grilling the shit out of me the whole time, he comes in and he's like, hey, he's like, Rich, like, here's what I want you to do, man. He's like, your personality will develop until you're 27 years old, so you still have time to kind of work on yourself. And when he said that, I was like, in my head, I'm like, man, fuck you, dude. Like, you know, like my personality isn't right for Ranger Regiment. And so then he's like, what I want you to do, go back to your unit, you know, like get some more time, and then, you know, come back, and I want you to be a company commander in the Rangers. And I was just kind of like, in my head, I'm like, this will never happen. I'm getting the fuck out of the Army as soon as I can. Like, one guy just ruined my career, you know, in a heartbeat. And so, yeah, man, I leave that. I'm like ashamed, right? I'm embarrassed. Like, my whole unit is like, oh yeah, Rich is a shoo-in. He's going to get it. I get back and I didn't make it, right? And so I was like, my, you know, head hanging low. I was like, I didn't even want to see anybody. I was just very, very ashamed. And but I get to my battalion commander, and he's like, all right, so you know, you're probably gonna want to get out of the Army now, huh? And I was like, yes, sir. And he goes, okay, what do you want to do until then? And I was like, I want to be a platoon leader. You know, he's like, okay, well, I can't give you scouts, but I can give you mortars. And I was like, awesome, I would definitely take it, you know. So I ended up taking a mortar platoon to Afghanistan, and it was one of the most formative experiences of my entire life. Everything worked out just the way it was supposed to. Yeah, and then I got out after we got back.
So due to that board, that's the whole reason you got out?
That is the primary driver of why, yeah. And so the other part of that story is my executive officer, he calls me into his office at one point, and he's like, hey, you know, sit down. And, you know, tell me about what happened. So I tell him that story I just told you. And he's like, all right, let me tell you about us. And this guy had served with the Ranger Regiment. And awesome guy, man. He's one of my favorite people I ever served with, Major Mike Condon. And so he's like, let me tell you a story about this colonel that, you know, fucked me over. And he's like, I was serving with him in 275 when the Pat Tillman, you know, debacle went down, right? When Pat Tillman was killed. And he's like, so who do you think it was that instituted the whole cover-up to begin with? He's like, it was that colonel. He's like, so don't you dare freaking go to bed tonight thinking that you have low traditional moral values compared to anybody else, and don't let anybody tell you that. And it just blew my mind that someone could tell me that, you know, and just like look me in the eye and tell me that I was a bad person is how I took it, right? And he could be responsible for instituting that huge cover-up. And so I'm like, man, this is fucked. And so that was just, I just knew, you know, I can't be a part of this anymore. Not to mention my career was derailed from where I thought I saw it going.
Yeah, I don't think that's talked about enough, that like how major of an impact these boards or even the military in general have on your mindset and your well-being after all, because like this thing's supposed to be building you up and making you into a better person, but then you get somebody, they could be great people, but sometimes they're turds too, you know.
Absolutely.
But it just demoralizes you and kicks you down. And it sounds like you had great leadership at the time to help try to build you back up and keep you up, but that's not always the case, because a lot of times once you get nixed from that board, you're left thinking that you are a failure or less than.
Yep.
And like it ruins people's careers. A lot of people that got out should have stayed in, and a lot of people that stayed in should have gotten out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and it's, you know, and that's just one experience, right? Like that one experience of, you know, a failure. You know, and I did have good leadership, right? Colonel Chad Sundin, that guy he was great, man. For all his flaws, he was a great dude, and really did help me out. Yeah, that's one experience, but I think you're like really on the right track, because it affects so many people in different ways. And there is such a you're basically like given an identity in the military. And it's like, okay, man, like you like killing people, you like shooting people, you are a fucking workhorse. Like you cannot have anything go wrong with you. Like you can't have a thread off your fucking uniform or you're fucked up. Like, you know, if one sock is longer than the other, you're fucked up. Like all these crazy ass perfectionist things that really do a lot of damage to someone like me who's already kind of a freaking weird perfectionist, like hypervigilant person. And yeah, man, you get this like identity. And so it really is, you know, while you're in the military, it affects you in one way. And then when you get out, it's just so damn hard to like figure out who the hell you are. For a lot of us, man, like a lot of veterans struggle with that.
Absolutely. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit more. What did you do for yourself to bring your morale back up and like make you believe in yourself again?
Man, I got really lucky, honestly. Like I got lucky to have this like, well, okay, so at the time I didn't think I was lucky. So I got given the mortar platoon right before we were going to deploy to Afghanistan. And so before that, I mean, I spent, you know, I had to go to mortar leaders course. I did, you know, we did the NTC rotation and all this shit. And I really wasn't in a good place mentally at all. It took me a very long time to kind of like pull out of that nosedive, years probably. And I'm not saying it was all because of that board. It was, you know, a bunch of different factors. But yeah, so I really wasn't in a good place. So then before we deploy, so we were going to Panjwai, Afghanistan, like super hot, like kinetic place in Afghanistan, birthplace of the Taliban. And I had never been. I'm 24 or whatever the hell I was. And this is in 2012. And so you know, I'm expecting, or I'm like going to lean on my NCOs, like as I always did, as any good officer would do. And my platoon sergeant can't deploy because he's got cysts in his knees. The guy that was going to replace him can't deploy because he's got liver cancer. And the guy that was going to replace him, so all three of the most senior NCOs in my platoon, the third guy, he has a brain tumor, and so he can't freaking deploy. So all three of the most senior NCOs in my platoon can't deploy. And so I have, like, I'm a kid. I've got a bunch of kids under me. I have, like, one NCO who is, like, one of my best friends in the world to this day, Tony Sheffy. Fucking love you, dude. And, I would not be here today if not for that man. And, yeah, so I was just like, oh, my God, like, I'm going to get people killed. Like, and it is on you as a platoon leader, right? Like, the buck stops with you. And, man, I went into a spiral. I was just like, you know, I was drinking so much before we deployed. I was just like mentally a psychotic person. And then we deployed, and I just put like every ounce of effort I had into that deployment. And man, it worked out. Like we built this like amazing team of young guys. And we got lucky when we needed to get lucky. We worked our asses off when we needed to work our asses off. We fucking did a ton of good shit over there. We like stopped a lot of bad guys from doing a lot of bad shit. And I'm really proud of what we did over there. And so that was a huge, and also the thing about being deployed is everybody left me alone. Like, it's like, if you're the freaking ground force commander, for the most part, right? Like if you're the ground force commander, you're the motherfucker in charge, like on the ground, then, you know, you don't have to, like you don't answer to anybody, like when you're in the moment, you know, like it's on you. And, you know, luckily enough, you know, things worked out, and, you know, we didn't make a lot of mistakes. And, so like they let me do my thing. And, that was really wonderful. Like I really felt like that is the capacity that I joined the Army to serve it. Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about that deployment?
Sure, we can, man. It was crazy. So I had the smallest platoon in the battalion. We had 27 guys when we went there. And, you know, most like an actual, you know, like MTO striker platoon has 40. And so I had 4 vehicles, and then I had all of our mortar equipment, right? So we had 120s, we had 81s, we had 60s. And then, so we had to man the mortars. We patrolled every other day. Like we had a sector just like any other line platoon. And then we had responsibility of the mortars. And so, we were firing illume missions at night. We had, 81s. We had like all kinds of shit that we were doing. At one point, what was his name? Freaking General Abrams. He said I was the busiest platoon leader in Afghanistan. And it was so funny. We ended up getting selected because everyone looks at the scout platoon as like they're the guys, right? But they fell apart over there because their leadership was shitty. And so we got given all the good assignments. Like, we got to go do all the cool guy stuff. Like, we were fucking fighting the Taliban, man. It was legit. And we got assigned. Like, we went to this place called Spurwangar. We were in Spurwangar for one of our companies, Bravo Company. They were there their whole deployment. And that was really the only place that shit like really popped off a ton for us. And we were given assignments on this, Operation Winter Road. And so Operation Winter Road, we were gonna build a road through the heart of Taliban country. And it was so cool. We had the not the National Guard, the reserve unit from Wisconsin, I believe it was, this engineer unit. Awesome guys, like military bearing, forget about it, but like engineers, like they knew how to fucking build a road. And so we were responsible for security for them the entire time during this road build. And we were patrolling at night. We were doing all kinds of crazy shit, man. Like it was intense. That was the most intense time that we had. Like all of us were sleeping. My guys were sleeping 3 hours a night. I was sleeping less, and it was for 2 solid weeks we did that. Just like contact all the time. Fucking IEDs. I don't know how many IEDs we blew up, like a shit ton. Man. That was the biggest part of what we did, I think. We also trained the Afghan military how to fire. The Afghan military ran the first live mortar mission, and I think so. I think it was over 10 years they hadn't run a live mortar mission, because like I don't know if anyone's been to Afghanistan. It's like the Afghan army is not very good. Like they're not professional. They don't know what the hell they're doing at all. We taught them how to use the mortars. So we ran our own infantry mortar leader course, and we taught them how to shoot their mortars. And so the cool thing about that is my guys had to learn how to use 82s, because we had 81s, and the Afghans had they inherited all these old Russian tubes, so they used 82s. So we had to learn a whole new system, and then teach the Afghans how to use it. And I will go to my grave telling people that the most resourceful person on earth is the American infantryman. And the fact that my guys figured out how to do this and they did it well is beyond me, because I took a fucking 6-week course in Benning, and I didn't know how to shoot a mortar. Like, you asked me even the beginning of how to do it today, I have no idea, don't remember. But my NCOs, they fucking rocked it. And then my soldiers, like, they were just awesome dudes, man. They were just motivated, good, hardworking dudes.
So, just before this, you got not kicked out of, but you weren't selected to be the Ranger, and your mindset was down, and then you go and have this great deployment. What do you think that credit was? You can accredit that to?
Teamwork, man. It was building that team, and I loved my soldiers. Like, I really loved my soldiers. I think that set me apart from every other officer in our battalion, right? Because there were some super talented guys. But I truly loved them, and it's not I'm not knocking anybody else, but they came first always, well before I did, well before the mission did, and I know that's everyone's mission first. Not for me, man. My guys came first always, and that's what made it all work. So I still talk to a bunch of them to this day. Every Veterans Day, call each other, talk to each other, and just send each other shitty things on Instagram, whatever. I still have a relationship with these guys that made such a difference in my life, and man, it was beautiful.
And how did you earn your Bronze Star?
It was, so there were 2 Bronze Stars given out in our battalion. I got one of them, and our signal officer got the other one, which is crazy, but the fact that guy got shit working is mind-boggling. The guy was awesome. My what do you call it? The statement on your Bronze Star or whatever. It's it was basically for all of the things that I just described. The however many the poundage of IEDs that we cleared. We had nobody in our platoon got hurt. Except for me. My 50 cal blew up in my face, and so I'd take that as a freaking win though. So poundage of IEDs. Afghan mortar leader course, firing that first successful mortar mission, live mortar mission with the Afghans, and then the amount of prisoners that we took. So, all three of those things together.
Okay. And how do you feel about being part of history?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's funny, man. Like it obviously was so formative for me, as it is for everybody. And it's a huge part of who I am. And I'm very, very grateful that I made it through without, losing limbs, losing pieces of myself. And I think it really gave me the strength to pursue all the things that I'm pursuing today. And it also, it just like earned me credibility, to say that I've been there and I've done that, and it's like, even like older people, like they look at some of the things that, people like myself have done, and it's like, okay, yeah, you might be younger, but you got a lot of miles on you, man. And it's important. And it's not something to take for granted.
Right. And what would you tell if you could talk to yourself after that board, what would you tell yourself?
Just let it roll off and go buy some Bitcoin, man.
Probably was a year for Bitcoin, huh?
Yeah, man. but honestly, I think just keep walking up the mountain. It's like it's out of my mindset now. Still, it's just like this. Like you will get over it. And what I wasn't good at back then, and I'm still not super good at it, but I'm working on it, is just like sitting with my discomfort longer. And so, I don't know, I'm just a person that wants solutions, and I want to fix stuff, and I want to, like, whatever I'm involved in, I want to make it better, and I want to, like, if there's a problem, let's find the solution. And that didn't have a solution for me. I couldn't see a solution, and so the only choice I had was to sit with it. And I was bad at sitting with it. I made a lot of impulsive decisions. I got a drinking problem. I did, a lot of dumb shit. And, I think, like, learning how to sit with that, I wish I could have been a little bit more conscious about it back then.
Okay. Are you spiritual or religious?
Spiritual, yeah. It's interesting. I'm not religious, man. I've always been like searching. You know what I mean? But I just, Christianity doesn't really resonate with me. It's interesting when I do feel like very close to a higher power, though. And I've had this discussion with, some of my best friends who are, most of them are Christian, and they don't really understand it, because it's like they only see, like their God, through that tunnel vision. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't know, right? Like I'm very confident there is something else out there. I feel connected to it on a very deep level, but I just don't know exactly what it is, and I'm okay with that. And it's like I'm fine with that. I don't think I'm meant to understand it, and if I am, I will one day. And so, I do think I'm very spiritual, and that really kind of solidified itself when I was in Peru. Yeah.
Before we get to Peru, how long after Afghanistan did you get out?
So I got back in like summer, fall time of 2013, and I got out in May of 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty quick.
And what was that transition out of the military like?
Man, my last months in the military were miserable. I was in the 3 shop. I was like, man, I could never sit. That's where I knew I could never sit behind a desk for a living. And yeah, gosh, I was so miserable. I was like, I'm gonna fucking kill somebody or myself, or like, I don't know. I was so upset about everything. And but then when I got out, all I knew is I wanted to be a coach. And so I got accepted to the master's program at ASU. So I was coming back to Arizona for exercise and wellness was my major, and concentration in fitness and conditioning. But I still didn't know what that really looked like for me. So I didn't know how to go about becoming a coach. I didn't know. All I know is like I loved working with people, and I loved training. I was training strongman at the time. It was super fun. Loved it. I was really into that like blossoming strongman movement and fitness, and just like world's strongest man stuff is the coolest shit ever. And I got out, moved back here to Phoenix, and I started working at LA Fitness, and that did not last very long. A few months there, and I was like, this is silly, man. Like I'm not making any money. It's just like I'm working for somebody else. I hated it again. And I was like, man, I'm going to do this myself. And so I took a bunch of my clients. I opened up a tiny little, studio gym, 1,000 square foot studio gym off 19th Ave in Camelback here, like heart of the freaking ghetto. I loved it. If I loved it, I didn't. I hated it. And, I started training people out of there while I was getting my master's. I was writing, I was teaching a little bit. I was getting divorced. I did a ton of shit that I was partying my ass off. I was just super impulsive. I became a little bit unhinged. And, I became unhinged is the best word. The chains were off, right? And, man, did I freaking abuse it.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine, man.
Yeah. What was something negative that you took from the military besides your drinking?
I took a bad attitude, man. I took a woe is me attitude, and I felt like I had been wronged, and that's just not the way to go about life. And it took me a while to get out of that mindset, and I was put a really sour taste in my mouth. I'm not a negative person. I'm a very positive person. And I was so negative about my experience in the military. I was like, just get me out. I don't want to talk to anybody in uniform ever again. I don't want to go to the VA. I don't want to get healthcare. I don't want to do any of that shit. Get me away from the military. And that's just the wrong way to go about that. So just that sour taste in my mouth, man. It was very sour.
And how long after getting out were you able to start coping and being healthy with being out?
Dude, it took a long time, a very long time. So I got out in 2014, and it wasn't until COVID happened that I even started getting involved in the veteran community again. 6 years for that. And so I ended up opening up a gym in 2017, current location, Liberty Performance Training off 24th Street in Oak here. And I opened that place, and that was my primary, employment. That was my source of business. I was teaching also to try to make a living for myself, because when you open up a gym, you don't make any money at the first, little bit, and there's ups and downs. It's a crazy experience. But then COVID happened, and they wanted to shut everything down, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, man, there's no way, no one's going to do this, right? And then everybody did it, and it rocked my worldview. I just was like, holy shit, are you serious right now? Everybody was rolling over. I mean, I reached out to other gyms, and I'm like, we don't have to do this. Do not close your door. I'm not closing my doors. This is insane. And man, what a time. What a time to be a gym owner, to be an American, or to freaking exist in the world, I guess. It's crazy everywhere. But the only people that I saw that were really espousing some of the same ideals and ideas that I had were veterans. And, they were saying, this is bullshit. This is not what I fought for. This is not the country that I know. This is anti-American. This is anti all of my rights, and yes, it was a difficult time for a lot of people. And yes, COVID was real. People were dying from it. And this was, but I've just never seen such a sacrifice of our youth for our older population. And I've never seen such a sacrifice of our freedoms. And the only people that were really talking that way, to me, seemed like veterans. And so I started getting a little bit more involved then. And then I got put in touch with Merging Vets and Players, which is a nonprofit organization that I'm absolutely obsessed with. It's just an amazing, amazing organization. And so every Wednesday night still, they come in, we do a little workout in our gym, and then we do a huddle afterwards. And so in this huddle, people share these very traumatic things that they're dealing with, these problems in their life that they're having, and it's just peer support, and a lot of times it's just a place to come, confess your sins, or have a shoulder to lean on, and just realize that you're not alone, and stay on track with your sobriety, or whatever it is for all these people that come. And I started seeing it was just saving people's lives. I watched it happening, and I just thought it was amazing. And I'm like, man, and it just it brought me back into the veteran community in such a powerful way. And now that's, my primary involvement is with the veteran community.
And so being involved with the veteran community, you feel like has helped you out and put you on a better path?
Oh, massively. Like, I can't overstate it enough. Like it's huge. The amount of help that I've gotten personally from the veteran community, as well as just the opportunities that it's provided me and the people that it's put me in front of to help. Like, yeah, I mean, it's been the highlight of my life so far.
Okay, and then also we were talking earlier, you said you went to Peru for some ayahuasca?
It's a perfect example of how the veteran community has helped me. And so I went with a group called Heroic Hearts Project. Went down to Peru for 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, and the important piece, that no one really talks about is the coaching beforehand and then the integration coaching afterwards. To really, it is the most therapeutic experience I've had in my life. I went there to try to redefine my relationship with alcohol. I've been successful with that so far, cut it out of my life. Took me a long time after Peru to really make it stick, but I think we finally got it to stick here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, man, as like I was saying earlier, I feel like I got 20 years of therapy in 3 days. It was the most magical experience I've ever had. We were talking about spirituality before. My final ceremony, I feel like I spent, 3-4 hours in the kingdom of heaven. I really do. I feel like I got to peel back the curtains of the universe and fucking look at something that people don't get to see. And it's funny, in Michael Pollan's book, he has this awesome analogy, and it's perfect for this. It's like, oftentimes you just don't have the words to describe an experience like that. And especially because a lot of people that haven't done something like that, they're like, oh, you're on drugs. And it's like, sure, okay, I was on, 2 leaves were put together, or a leaf and a vine were put together and, crushed and evaporated and whatever, and I drank it, and it made me, hallucinate these things inside my head and think about these things differently. Yes, that's true. But I can't explain how real it was, right? Like, it was a non-ordinary reality that I experienced that was very, very real. And Michael Pollan puts it great. He's like, imagine taking a caveman and zapping him into New York City, like in Manhattan, and he would just be just blown away by what he sees. And then, okay, boom, he's back in his cave, and his caveman buddies are like, what was it like? How in the world would a caveman explain that? He would, it was big, it was huge, he wouldn't have the words to describe it. And that's how I feel about my experience on ayahuasca. I don't have the words to do it justice, but I do have the experience with me that I'll take with me forever.
Right. So I am very interested in doing this for myself as well, but I want to share the whole story, right?
Sure.
So what was the process of getting Heroic Heroes and Hearts?
Heroic Hearts Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the signing up process like for that?
Yeah, so you check out their website, and it's not for everybody, right? But this organization is wonderful. They're doing wonderful, wonderful things for the veteran community in the field of psychedelic therapy and integration. And so you go to their website, and I filled out, it's a pretty lengthy application process, like why you're interested in doing it, what kind of things you've tried, that type of thing. Then you interview with one of their coaches. And that was a really cool experience for me in itself, right? And so I'm, and this is a organization that's for veterans, right? Specifically, I think for combat veterans. And so I go into this interview, and I'm kind of doubting myself. I'm like, man, maybe this isn't for me. This isn't meant for veterans like me. This is for, guys that were, picking up their buddies' body parts out of buildings and shit like that. And so eventually we get into this meeting or into this coaching interview, and he's like, so tell me about your experience overseas. So I'm like, yeah, I tell him about it. And I'm like, yeah, but it sits pretty well with me. It sits okay with me. I don't, have these night terrors or anything like that. That being said, I do show very impulsive behavior sometimes. I've really struggled with alcohol, all these things. I've burned a couple of my relationships very, very hard. He kind of chuckles a little bit. He's a combat vet too, and he's like, yeah, well, it's not exactly normal to volunteer for a job that requires you to kill people and be shot at. And he's like, so, for a lot of us, our trauma comes from before we even joined the military. And it was like light bulbs started going off. I had never even considered that, and it seems silly to me now because I'm like, I'm kind of deep in this work, and I'm like, of course I was affected by, my childhood and the way that I was raised, and like all these thoughts that I have about things, and it just like set me on this path, So I got accepted into the program, and then we do like, you do coaching leading up to the experience. We did, I think it was 3 group sessions with a group of vets that are going together. And then you do 3 individual sessions where you're like really getting into the work with a coach. And then also part of that experience is the dieta. It's like very important. It's a detox from like everything in your life. So like all the shitty food and the drinking and the drugs, like none of that shit. Like no pornography, like scary movies. Like try to get away from your phone a little bit. Like there's a huge diet, like a huge detox from all this stuff that are like it's normal to us in our American lives. And eating really well, drinking well, taking care of yourself, and then you go do this experience, and man, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. We fly into Lima and then into Tarapoto, and we stay overnight in Tarapoto. We're all kind of getting to know each other. There's a lot of nerves because not a lot of us had done anything like this before. There were a couple guys that had, and then we drive into the Amazon, and we go to this retreat center. And just being in the Amazon alone is like, holy shit. Like, it was an experience unlike any other. And then we meet the healers, and it's a whole process. It's really beautiful. And then we take part in these ceremonies, and the ceremonies are, a whole nother thing entirely. Just incredible. And so we take part in the ceremonies, and they're each night, and then we're doing yoga in the mornings, and ayahuasca can be really I wouldn't say hard on your digestive system, but it's you can feel it. Like at times I felt like it was like snaking its way through my belly, and like my second night, man, I was like purging big time. And so some people have experiences where they're like they're puking, and they're dry heaving, and all these things, and so it can be really hard on you. Like even if you follow that dieta perfectly, you are like purging a lot of energy out of you. And so those ceremonies happen, and then afterwards you go home, and that's where like the real work kind of begins. And it's like you are trying to integrate these things that you learned while you were there, and that like you were shown, because it's you take this substance, and then these Shipibo people that are working with you, and they are directing the energy in the room, is the only way that I can really describe it. It's absolutely beautiful. They rotate around the room. There was a male and a female in my experience, and they rotate around the room, and they sing these Icaros to you, and they'll never sing the same Icaro twice, and so they sing to you specifically for you, and oh man, it is just the most incredible experience. So then you take that experience back with you, and that's where you're trying to integrate these things that you were shown. And you have to remember, like, everything that happened, everything that you saw, everything that you hallucinated, or however you want to think about it, it came from you. So it comes from your brain. Like, you're not like being shown a screen. No one's like manipulating you. This came from your head. And so this medicine shows you things that are on a very deep level to you somehow. It's important to you, and it's up to you. And working with a coach is so helpful. You shouldn't do it without it, in my opinion. And you work with a coach to kind of integrate these things into your life and find what was important, and then kind of like plan how you're going to become better afterwards.
I want to hear about your second ceremony, because you told me. I just want to show that it's not all you're not going to see the greatest things at times.
No,
but it's still beneficial to you. So.
Sure, yeah. I'll kind of talk briefly about all three. I went in the first night, no idea what to expect. I was very nervous. And I took this medicine, and the guy next to me, he started having a real bad time, right? And he was shivering and shaking and laughing, and it was crazy, And I was kind of like, man, okay, this is fine for me, and it doesn't really not really affecting me too much. And then I started seeing kind of like wisps of like bear jaws coming at me, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I love bears. Like my company mascot is a bear. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, how cool is this? And I felt like I wanted to like breathe it in, and it was like very powerful, right? And then I started thinking about my family, and I had all these revelations about my parents, who I was like very angry with and upset with about like how hard they were on me and all these things they demanded and all these things. And I realized like, man, like, no, I'm like, actually before that, so I'm thinking about my wife too, and I'm like, oh, I'm like nervous. I'm like, oh, what if she's like talking to guys on the internet or whatever? And then I'm like, man, dude, that's so silly. Like, why would she be doing that? And I have all these, like, it's like something else is telling me, and it's like, why would she do that, man? Like, you're a great man. Like, why would she be doing that? And then it's like, and why are you a great man? It's because your father showed you how to be a great man. And then I'm like, and then your mom is just this fierce mama bear who is just freaking, like, I don't know who's got mommy problems, like, listening to this podcast, but shit, man, I figured out I did. And I was like, and she's just this fierce, mama bear who's just doing the best to freaking take care of her cubs. And I just had all these, it was like revelation after revelation. And then, after I was kind of done having those revelations, it just turned into this beautiful night where I was just with bears all night. And it was really incredible. And so I roll into the second night, and I'm like, this is going to be fucking awesome, right? Like, I'm going to have another experience like this. I show up, and I take the medicine, and before I took the medicine, I was always thinking, like, in my head, I was like, make myself a promise, like, I promise I'll try my hardest, I promise I'll try my hardest with whatever I get shown. So I take the medicine, go back to my little spot in the Maloka, and all this like beauty from the night before, it's like the opposite. And so I can hear like I can hear like the walls melting, and I'm like, oh, uh-oh. And like all these like beautiful colors that I was seeing last night, they're different. It's like darker. It's like purple and black, and I feel like I'm just like melting a little bit. And then I hear someone across the room start purging and like vomiting. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like getting angry because I can't concentrate on myself because he's puking so loud. And I'm just like, shut up, man. Like, shut the fuck. And I get angry, And then I lost track somewhere of my inner voice, like my thoughts. Like, I lost track of my thoughts. And all I had were like voices coming at me, like, no, you're stuck in here with us now, bitch. And like, it was like horrifying. And I felt like I was trapped in hell, and I felt like I was losing my mind. And I realized, through that experience, like, insanity is hell for me. And everyone's hell looks different, but to me, it's insanity. And I kind of like, so the overall experience lasts about 4 hours, and for me it did. And about 2 of those, maybe 2.5 of those 4 hours, I was stuck in some kind of purgatory or a hellscape, whatever you want to call it. And I started to pull out of it, and I was just like, oh man, like I'm like gonna shit my pants right now. And that was like dangerously close to explosive diarrhea. And I was in no shape to stand up from my mat. Like it was very difficult. And so so then I start laughing at myself a little bit. I'm like, man, like these guys, they're gonna make you shit your pants, dude. You're gonna shit your pants. And I start like laughing at myself a little bit. And then I kind of have this like epiphany, and I'm like, I asked to learn about endurance while I was at this place, at this retreat center. And I realized this was my lesson in endurance, and that if I could endure that torture that I just endured, that mental anguish, then I was capable of enduring a lot of things, so long as I maintained discipline, right? And I maintained humor. And that, like, as I'm kind of like giggling to myself and laughing, like I realized that like humor is something that I just cannot ever let go of, and it will help me, just like it did in the army, does in the army for a lot of people. That like black humor is so effective in getting you through difficult things. And so it was just like a really cool lesson in the tools that I already have. And now I feel even more equipped for something like that with this breath work that I've been doing, and really staying connected to my breath. I feel like even in that situation, I'm very curious if it would ever happen again, if I would be able to focus and come back to my breath and kind of surrender to that hell and see what happens. Because I think I would be able to treat it a little bit differently now. But yeah, it was a very, very fascinating experience for me. And then, like I said, that third night, as bad as the second night was, my third night was infinitely better. It's so indescribable. Just, I'm like weeping tears of joy while all these songs are being sung. And, I truly felt like I was in the presence of God. So hard to explain. And why would it be easy to explain? Like how in the world would God ever be easy to explain? And, I do like there was one particular moment where I felt this like celestial being kind of scoop me up and hold me in her arms, and she was just singing to me and just telling me how much she loved me and that like she chose me to be here. I'm here for a reason, and it was just so validating for me. And it also, like the more I thought about it, it was a beautiful experience, and I didn't really, until I started integrating these things. I didn't really think about it this way, but a month later, I was still chewing on it and thinking about it, and I realized that I was being taught a lesson about soothing, and it's something in relationships that I've always wanted, and of course it's connected to my mother, and I wasn't soothed enough as a kid, or whatever, but these are all just lessons that I learned, and so now I realize that I don't need someone else to soothe me always. I can't look externally. I have to be able to provide that for myself. And so it was another like really powerful lesson about sitting with discomfort longer and being able to do these things myself. So, yeah.
And what was the coaching like after that?
Yeah, I got so lucky. I worked with a wonderful coach named Mike Botello. He was awesome. He helped me kind of just like ground first, like this is the first practice. You ground yourself and you kind of come back to reality, and because I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make in this field, is they just end up chasing these experiences instead of, hey, I'm going to do this experience, and then the point of it is to integrate it into your life and make it a part of who you are, instead of just, hey, I'm going to go trip in the jungle every few months, and which is fine if that's what you want to do, but I personally think it's not for me, and that's I think it's a mistake to look at it that way. And Mike was just, man, he really helped me like integrate these experiences and just provided a non-judgmental space for me to talk about my shit with. And he inspired me to actually become a psychedelic integration coach myself. And so I started, I took that course about 6 months, company called Being True to You, an incredible company. And I use a ton of those techniques and skills that I learned from them and from Mike in my own experience. I use them today while I'm coaching.
And how has it changed you? Do you feel lighter after that experience?
Oh, lighter. I feel more equipped. I feel more resourced. I don't know if lighter is the right word, but I did for a while. When you first get back, man, like nothing can touch you. It's like, I think they call it like the glow, like the afterglow. I was just, and people do, like they glow, like their faces are red, and like it's crazy. But not anymore. I don't think I feel lighter. I just feel like I have more purpose, and I feel more confident that I'm on the right path. I think that's actually the best way to put it. I feel more confident.
All right. And what is that path right now?
So it's the path is actually quite general. It's helping my community, and it's protecting my community. And so what has changed though is my source of the source of my community. And so now I'm Executive Director for Quality Resilience Fitness, and so that's a nonprofit that helps veterans, and so we use physical fitness as the vehicle towards better mental health. And physical fitness has been a huge part of my life, pretty much always, my entire life. I grew up playing sports and whatever, but it's helped me realize how important fitness is for my own mental stability, my own nervous system regulation, all of that. And so at my gym, we had been working with this company, or with this organization, QRF, and we had done a couple events with them, and they were sponsoring like veteran athletes to do strongman shows and that kind of thing. And I approached Chris, who was the founder, who's had his own struggles with suicide, and it's why he founded QRF in the first place. And I was like, hey man, like, what do you think about like giving me the keys to the car for a little bit and let me drive this thing and see where we can take it. And the guy has the biggest heart in the world, man. Like, and all he wanted to do was like help veterans. And so I think he saw this opportunity. He was like, yeah, let's do it, man. So we started putting a team together around it. We got an awesome board now. We're doing events like across the nation. We got a strongman event in Nebraska. We've got a poker tournament coming up next month here. We've got all kinds of things going on. And then we're sponsoring athletes to do all sorts of cool things. We just sponsored Nick Myers. He went up to Fort Drum. He's one of the world's strongest man. He won it once as a lightweight, so a 200, I think, under 200 pounds. Dude's awesome. Like he's an Army vet. He's a door gunner. But we sponsored him to go up to Fort Drum. He filmed this amazing documentary there. Pulled a helicopter. On the track. It was sick. We're sponsoring people to compete in different ways. But then we also created this coaching program. And so one of the things that I've seen is in a lot of these programs that are intended for veterans is they're not meeting the veteran where they are. And it's a really difficult thing to do, but they're like, okay, we've got this like cohort of people and we'll put you through this strength. We're going to teach you about strength and conditioning, or we're going to put you through this fitness concept of ours. And it's going to be good for a while. But it's not individualized. And so, sometimes it works for some vets, but a lot of vets fall off after that. They do the programs like a yo-yo diet. They do the diet and they fall off, or they do the program, they fall off, and they go back to whatever else they were doing. So we designed this program to really meet a veteran exactly where they are. So for 6 months, we sponsor a gym membership, like basically wherever they want to go, wherever they want to train. And we have conversations with them about like what would be a good idea, what would be a bad idea, before we actually just, okay, cool, go to LA Fitness and have a good time. And then we provide all their strength and conditioning programming for them. And that looks wildly different for everybody. Like some people want to be runners, and so they're running a lot more. Some people want to be weightlifters. Some people want to compete in strongman. Some people have massive mobility issues, or they need, like a much more physical therapy design thing. And so our coaches, of which I am one, we are very experienced in this field of exercise science, and we're both certified strength and conditioning specialists, and we know how to create exercise programs for pretty much anyone. We've worked with a ton of different people in our careers, and so we design these programs for them, and we kind of give them the plan that they need, and they are a huge part of helping us design that plan. And that's a huge part of why it's successful, is the veteran actually has a say in their future, right? And what they want to do. So we design this plan for them, and then we have virtual coaching sessions with them throughout the 6 months. And so we start off on a weekly basis, and then we move to every other week, and then we go to monthly. And in these coaching sessions, tons of things come up, right? Like we don't just talk about strength and conditioning always. There are some people that, hey man, that's all I want to talk about. Cool, that's all we'll talk about. We're not trying to force anybody to do anything. Like you came to us with this, so let's talk about what you want to talk about. But a lot of times people start to think about the reasons why they've been prevented from pursuing something like this in the past. And so we address a lot of trauma sometimes, and we address addiction problems, and we address all these things as they're getting in shape. And so it's a really powerful program. And we can't, go out there and throw a blanket and affect 1 million veterans. I wish we could, but we can affect one at a time. And it makes a huge difference.
And how can QRF be found?
So on Instagram, we're QRF Fit, if you want to follow us on social media. And then QRFvet.org is our website. And definitely check that out if you get a chance.
And how can you be found?
So I'm on Instagram a little bit, but easiest way to get a hold of me is just email me at qrfrich@gmail.com.
And then last time, your gym that you have out here in Arizona?
Yeah, that's Liberty Performance Training.
And that's located?
That's off 24th Street in Oak, so it's right off the 202, 51, super convenient. Definitely come check us out.
Okay, I'm going to start wrapping this up. Do you have any saved rounds, anything I missed that you want to address real quick?
No, I just want to say thank you, man. This has been a great experience. I love talking about psychedelics. I love talking about coaching. I love talking about veterans. So grateful for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Love the setting. And it really got my juices flowing this morning, man. So thanks.
Good. Thanks for coming on, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.